Do you find yourself feeling like you are meant for more, but don't know the required steps to get you there? Well, today's guest delivers talks around the globe on precisely what you need to do and how you can cultivate what he calls a dominator's identity. My guest today is Anthony Trucks. He's a former NFL athlete, entrepreneur, keynote speaker, coach, and an author. Anthony and I delve into a wide array of topics, including how to make progress in every area of your life, what dark work is and why not doing it may be holding you back, Anthony's productivity system, including how to fill and stick to your calendar, how to shift your identity and become the person you've always wanted to be, just how and why you should carry out Triad Talks, if you should prepare yourself for an identity shift outside of your control, and how to acknowledge your ego without becoming attached to it. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Anthony Trucks. Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Anthony, I know you've been on a long journey to get to the person you are today and what you do. But if you could perhaps give us a little bit of an overview and maybe tap into an experience during that time, which was a key moment for you into what you do now.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think they come to mind. So I'll say I have a crazy, interesting life. I'm sure we'll get to some different parts of it. But if you're asking specifically a moment in time that goes, hey, this was one that pivoted me into the work I do now, that was probably in 2000 and I'd probably say 2012 to 14 window. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I was in the middle of a divorce, a lot of crazy going on. I wasn't a great guy in a sense of I didn't like who I was. I wasn't doing harm to people or anything. I just wasn't being a great human at the level that I believe I should have been. And I was kind of thrust in this whole experience of like, what do I do to make the next stage of my life not as crappy as this one, you know? And I went really internal, which was not a normal thing for me to do, nor I think it's anything normal most people do. But I go, where's my fault in all the craziness of my life? And I was presented with a lot of things I didn't really like, I'd probably say, or wasn't a fan of. But I finally, for the first time, accepted it, gave myself permission to improve upon it, and then started digging into it. And in the process of doing it, rekindled my marriage that had been divorced for 3 years. I'm now remarried. Family's back tight, locked in.
Wow.
I'm happy. I'm healthy. I have an amazing business. Like I'm doing well, thriving in a lot of spaces, I would say. And because of what I went through, it wasn't just me going through it blindly going, oh, I got to the backside. That's over, right? It was me going, hey, what happened there? What did I do that maybe other people can extract a lesson from? What's something that could be beneficial for other people who have battled this or are battling this? And so in the kind of reflection of it all, I learned that there's some things that everybody can, honestly, I think emotionally connect to, but also actionably connect to, that I started sharing. And the more I shared, the more people liked it. And little by little, it kind of refined itself and, honed down to what I know I do really well. And I know what I don't do really well. And so I kind of found my pocket and I tucked into it, and I have a blast doing something I love to do that people love that I do.
While we're on that, what is it that you do?
I teach individuals how to develop dominators' identities.
Dominators' identities. That's awesome.
Yeah. And if you think about it this way, don't think of like dominator like I'm walking around like this is my park and my playground. We're not talking about that. The idea is dominate means to govern and control. So you can govern and control your morning routine, your personal habits, your triggers, responses. So really be in governance of yourself in control situations, or control yourself in uncontrollable situations. But that's something that you develop as an identity. And if you think about it, the most successful people we know typically, the ones we are honored by to see, like we're enamored by what they've accomplished, they have this sense of confidence that it oozes from them. They naturally have this swag, we call it. And that is not an accident. That is something that's developed in the dark, which is why my process, my brand is called Dark Work. But the end destination is to develop an identity within you that has a mentality of, I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. So when you show up to defining moments, you got what you need inside you to take on.
Have you heard of Robert Glover?
The name sounds familiar. What? He's an author, correct?
Yeah, No More Mr. Nice Guy. He did that book.
Okay.
I had him. He was on last week actually, and
Mhm.
just what you were saying then just made me think of what he would call like that nice guy syndrome.
Mhm.
People pleasing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can
and
still, I mean, you want to do all that. You still be a nice guy, but you just don't have to have a sense of like the imposter syndrome that most people walk around with. That I don't think should exist, but it's there.
yeah. And I mean, obviously, like, yeah, that nice guy thing, it doesn't mean like don't be a nice guy. I think it's just his
Mhm.
brand of
Yeah,
like framing on something. But you mentioned something there, you didn't like yourself.
yeah.
How did you become aware of that?
Oh, I looked at my life and I realized things sucked, and then I had an ownership moment that we all have to have, which was I am the common denominator in all of my problems. Whether it's I created the problem or I'm allowing the problem to persist. And when you actually take a really unique ownership in that aspect, it does suck a little bit because you're going, man, I'm part of the cause of this thing going sideways. And the interesting thing is most people look at it only as a negative. They go, oh, but I don't want to feel bad. And it's like, no, it's not about feeling bad about what you did. It's about realizing you do have some power to make sure it never happens again. It's a
Mm,
little bit of a gift you give yourself. And so for me, like I just sat back and go, my marriage fell apart. My business isn't doing well. I got friends that I don't really think are like savory that I should be bringing around other people. I'm dating women that won't even bring around my kids. So I'm like, this is not a good dude. Like these are all headaches and problems, and I'm out of shape too. I'm like, this is something where I can blame it on the market. That's why the business isn't doing well. I could blame it on being busy, and that's why I can't be with the kids and the business doing what it's doing, or I'm out of shape because I can't get my time into work. I can make all these excuses, or I can go, no, man, it's all centered around you. You allowed it, or you created this. And what's going on now is I had to stop and go, well, if I don't want this here, and I was part of that process to make it happen, I have to do the heavy lifting. It's kind of like I think Mark Manson talks about it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. So I now took a
yeah.
big ownership and go, all right, something's got to change. And I dove in, and that's an ugly journey, man. It's an ugly one, but I'd go through it a million times again to get what I have now.
How long and what did that process look like? How long were you doing like the dark work for?
Dark work, yeah, it is different. There's a Cal Newport has the idea of deep work, which I love. It's a great book too,
Mm,
and it's more of the idea of like settling in and getting to flow state. I look at it more as like there's dark work, and it's dark work is the idea of you're doing something to achieve a goal, but become the kind of person that achieves that. It's more of an identity type thing. It's more of we choose to take things on, not realizing who we become when we take it on. And I like to reframe that to an extent of going, I'm not just going to borrow habits and do something to get in great focus. If I look up 5 years from now and I'm out of shape and I hate my life and my wife left me, that's not a good thing to take on. But if I'm looking at with the idea of like who I become, it's big. Now, what that looks like is, let's put it this way: we've always heard the language of like, I don't want to be out of character. I don't want to be out of character. Like that's out of my character. We always have this negative angled connotation to it. Like it's this going downhill. And I go, no, no, no. Out of character is also up. Out of character is also going to become the person that gets in better shape and runs a better business and fixes their marriage, is a better parent. It's a better friend. It simply means doing something you don't do now. And no matter whether you're going up or going down, they are both uncomfortable. But I would believe, and in my experience, going up is actually emotionally harder because you're trying to go to a place that you don't feel like you deserve just yet. And so you're battling this voice that goes, but that's not who I am. And I don't, if I do this, people are going to point me out and say, but you don't deserve this, or I'm not going to think I deserve it. So I become a self saboteur and things are hard. But what it actually is you have to lean into doing things every day that are way out of character. They make your butt pucker. I say it like, oh, uncomfortable, right? They make your stomach twist up, but you do it. And the first, stages of doing it, it sucks. Because here's a couple things you don't even pay attention to. You have an internal voice telling you you're not supposed to do it. You don't deserve it. Like there's an internal conversation. Then it's coupled with the external conversations of people who know you to be one thing and they don't like you changing. Like humans don't like change. As much as we say we do, we don't. So when I see somebody changing, even jokingly, I'll be like, that's not what you do. Like, look at you, you idiot. Like, and so you get people poking you and you go, you know what? I don't want to be cast out of my tribe. I don't want to lose friends. Let me go ahead and tuck back in that little space of comfort that they know me to be. So either you slide back into your dark hole and you just sit there and you hate it, or you keep on moving and it sucks. So the first phase is this really interesting, like it's just drudgery of moving in a direction. You have to get up every day and go, am I going to do this again today? Yeah, you can do it again. The second phase is a little bit better. The second phase is one where you remove more of the internal voice that goes, you can't do it, because you've now provided proof enough for yourself to go, no, I could do this. I've gotten better at this. I'm feeling a little bit better. I feel more confident, because here's the thing. When you do something hard, you gain huge amounts of pride. Like all of us, if we're to sit back and go, what's the most thing you're most proud of? Your brain goes to this thing that you are proud of emotionally because of how hard it was to overcome it. So when we have this thing that's very difficult and we push through it for a month or 2 months and we've done it, the internal voice switches and goes, nah, you're dope now, right? So the internal voice changed a little bit, but the external voices still exist. And now I have to determine, do I want to keep hearing this voice or do I want to get new voices? So do I want to cut these friendships off? Do I want to move into a direction of finding new people? And that's also a whole different discussion. But the third phase is a beautiful one. The third phase is one where you have now done this thing and you know who you are. You know who you've become, what you've accomplished. There's a sense of self. And you look at other people and go, you're an idiot if you don't see who I am now, right? So you're good and you're more confident. And then the other side of it is, in the third phase, the voices that were usually negative, they've now been retrained on who you are, and it changes and they go, I see you. And then you find more people that see you because you've elevated yourself, that didn't know you before, that now know you. The way I explain it, when I was in high school, I want to be a football player. I want to be great. And I wasn't very good at the time. And the first, month of this doing this, I'm like, what am I doing? Lifting weights and running routes and doing this football stuff. I don't do this. My teammates also, you suck, drugs. What are you doing? Right. The second phase comes in a couple months in. I go, I'm feeling good. Teammates, look at this guy still out here. What are you doing out here? You're still slow. You can't catch a football, man. What are you doing? The third phase, I'm like, I'm a monster. And they go, hey, Trucks, man, can I get a workout with you? It changes. It's a retraining. And so the journey of this, while I've just summed it up simplistically, it is hard. It's an every day, every minute, every hour thing for the first few phases, the first two specifically. And it gets easier in time. And then eventually, here's the beautiful end part. When you cross that threshold and there's no definitive moment, it doesn't happen at 91 days and 32 seconds, you will wake up one day and go, damn, I'm amazing. Like you have a sense of you reflect upon things and go, I don't know when it happened, but man, I fell in love with myself, right? And now here's the cool thing. While it was hard to climb to this certain point here, it's emotionally just as easy as it was before you started. Because a lot of us, where we're at in our lives right now, it's not emotionally draining every day, right? You're just doing your thing, going through the process. You have your ups and downs, but for the most part, you can manage this and probably do it for 50 years, right? But then you start going uphill like I'm talking about. It's hard. It's an emotional drain. But at a certain point, you get to the level where your identity has elevated to where you're in a dominator's identity. And it's emotionally just the same as it was before because it's now your new normal. The idea is to set this path, go through the journey, go from normal, elevate up, and create a new normal. So now your same level of effort creates a vastly different, higher elevated level of success.
Do you think, I was thinking about strategies during the journey to be able to actually notice that you've made improvement? Because I was thinking one of the things sometimes you can't actually tell the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look at it this way. And this is the difference, I think, between myself and a lot of we'll call it speakers. Because my main thing I do is I'm a speaker. I hop on stage, I do my thing. And what I found was there's a certain level of impact I can make from a stage in an hour. There's a certain level of impact I can make beyond the stage for 16 weeks or 5 months or a year with you. So I go, I need to be able to give people something they can do well beyond the stage that is going to deliver on the promise of what I'm talking about. So when I say I develop Dominator's identities, it's not for me telling you my story, right? That does nothing for you. It's a cool, entertaining piece. Mm-hmm. What really changes it is you doing something. So I had to create a whole curriculum on you doing something. We called a dark work experience. The reason I call it an experience is this. I'm talking about developing a whole new identity. That's a rewiring psychologically and neurologically. You don't just all of a sudden go, I'm better. No, something, you had to go through a crucible an experience to come out and go, okay, I got through it, and you're rewired. You see things differently. Like it's you took the blue pill, the red pill, whatever it is, and you woke up, right? And so with that, I realized I had to create a process for people to go through. And what you're mentioning is a beautiful piece of it, because it needs to be in place. We need to see progress. So we have what's called this process. It's called Roots and Fruits. Roots and Fruits is my weekly measuring tool with my clients. I found that a lot of folks go, I want to have a better life. And then they go, well, what do I got to do? I don't know. Let's just do some things better. And you start kind of grasping at straws to figure something out that you can focus on to give energy to help you better. And I go, what if we just kind of parsed our life up into segments and focused on the individual pieces? So you could give it more genuine attention, right? If I say I want my life to be better, what does that mean? Does it mean you want to have better health? Do you want to be a better parent? Do you want to be in better shape? Do you want better money? Like, what does that mean, right? And so I go, let's just focus on them individually. So we kind of opened them up, and there's the roots and the fruits. And the reason I call it that is this. The roots of our life will keep us grounded and anchored. So when the storms of life come blowing, we stay. We don't get blown around, town like a tornado. Also, it allows the roots to absorb the nutrients to be able to produce great fruits in our lives. The roots are faith, family, health, friends, and emotional control in heightened situations. The fruits are career, education, finances, escape, like traveling the world, and purpose. If my roots are good, I can create great fruits. If I have a good base of control of my faith, of my family dynamic, my friendships in life, my health, and my emotional control when things go crazy, well, I can do damn near anything. Like, I'm grounded. So I can create more in my career. I can create more in my health. I can create more in my finances. I can actually live a life of purpose. I can go take trips and explore the world. I can learn and be actively spending time engaging in education. And so what we do is we actually separate these up. We give them numerical numbers between 0 and 10. There's a process we go through to first cast a vision of what the greatest piece of that looks like, to really get clear on when you'll know you'll cross the finish line for that section. And then we go, all right, what's something we could do to increase this by a value of 1? Not make it a 10. I think making it a 10 is naive. I need an action I can take to increase it by a value of 1, because I'll do that action, right? And then what we do is we actually formulate a whole process and a structure of what your life looks like, and you step into that thing. So when I was talking about earlier, things you do that make your butt pucker, that test you, that make you feel uncomfortable, this is how we find out what it is. So for example, if you go, man, I really want to improve my family dynamic. Family, we can open up to go parenting and my marriage, my partnership, right? There's a lot that goes into that. There's a whole lot. Like, maybe you and your wife argue every single day. Well, how do we figure that dynamic out? What does it look like you doing? Not complaining about her. Where's your ownership of what you must do, even if you don't want to do it? And so you find out what it is, and now we schedule it. It gets put into your calendar. It's going to happen on Monday at 3 p.m, right? And when it shows up, you got to get it done. And the thing is, day 1 sucks. Phase 1 sucks, Phase 2 gets a little better than eventually phase 3. But every one of these segments does this. And every week you circle back and see your progress. There's the idea that I used to own a gym. My degree's in kinesiology, essentially. And I'd train athletes and people. And I found that when someone set a goal and they only focus on the goal, they never reach the goal. But if they set a goal and they celebrated every pound they lost or every pound of strength they gained, they went beyond the goal, because they got settled into, they weren't trying to reach something that wasn't who they are. They were doing things that became who they were to do them, and they blew through this goal that they had set because they became the kind of person that does that thing, and it went well beyond. And so the idea is, if you wake up every day and you're not measuring, like every week, what your progress is, you're only focused on when you cross the finish line. And the idea is to fall in love with the day and not the destination. Because if I love the day, the destination happens and I go, oh, okay, cool. And I get back in love with the thing of the day I want, and I go beyond that goal. And so for us, we measure these areas, we focus on the actions for them, we infuse them into our life, and we move forward through them.
Awesome. And do you do you like periodize these things in these different areas? Would you like take would you look at different areas, like have a couple of tasks each week within family?
All of them. So there's 10 you can work on. We've done everything from all 10 to a segment of them. I have found that there is a certain kind of person who can accomplish all 10. That person is an individual who already functions with a very structured calendar. If you can function with a structured calendar, I can give you 10. If you don't do that yet, I can give you 3 at max. Because I'm going to have to spend more time getting you to follow what's on your calendar, create the calendar first, follow the calendar to get it done. Then once you got those first few and you get a good cadence and a rhythm for it, now we can put a bunch more the next time around. But the first time through, we're talking 2 or 3 of them, because those alone will test you. Everyone will test you. But if you have the ability to focus on just the day because you've got a good operation with your calendar and schedule, you're good. But if not, most people are like, they're looking at 5 days away and there's an overwhelm to all the stuff that has to get done this week. I don't do that. I go, what has to be done today? Like, I'm going to tell you right now, I went to bed last night and I was like, what's the first day on my calendar? And I saw what it was and I got up. I didn't know I had this really until like maybe a half hour before, because I'm looking at my calendar. I can see it now. I know what the rest of my day looks like. But for me, I'm just focused on showing up in this moment, present, trusting that past Anthony planned my life properly.
Yeah, that's good. That's something I've been I've been trying to be like loads more present with stuff at the moment, actually. And certainly I heard it, have you ever heard of a chap called Ross Edgley?
I have not.
He's like a bit of an endurance athlete. He was the first guy to swim around the Great Britain.
Okay.
And he does all these like crazy things, and he's like the resilience guy. And I was listening to him, and he was talking about, because I'm big into my training, and I do a thing called High Rocks. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have.
And yeah, and so I'm really interested in like mental frameworks and little tricks that you can use during a race or whatever. And one of the things that he said was, just be present with each, every movement of the pedal or, the ground, and how's my form. And rather than, the opposite being, oh, fucking hell, when's this going to end? And it's just something that's like recently, it's just been coming into like a lot of my life. And I'm like, hold on a minute, just be present. And I know it's like, like we hear it a lot, don't we? And it's so cliched about being present, but like there's like, when you really start to get it, I think there's like real power.
There is. I think the whole idea of being present is the fact that I can't affect the future just yet, except for what I do now. I can't change the past. I can learn from it, right? But if I'm present now and I do great in this present moment, then I know the future is going to be cool too, because I'm going to do things properly to set myself up for it. And if you're present in the things you're doing now and you're focused on them, you don't have to second guess them when you get to the future. I think a lot of people's anxiety from like when I start working with them, their anxiety comes from having a task on something like they're supposed to do, a calendar to do, and they start thinking about, but is this the right thing to do right now? Should I be doing this or that? And I'm like, well, what did we fail to plan properly to organize for you to be questioning what you planned? That means you weren't present when we planned. And so now in the present, you can't be present. And so what I like to do is just sit back and go, man, let's spend like, sometimes at the beginning, it's like a good 3-4 hours of organizing what you're supposed to look like, but be present with that. Don't be thinking about the future. It's like, what do I have to do? Okay, cool. That needs to take place at that time. Let's trickle it back. What are the things that need to be done in the week leading up to it? What has to be done every day? Like, should I take my supplements? Should I work out? Like, what are the things I should do? And what you do is you start being present and focused here. You put a timer on if you need to, and you start just rock and roll and getting things done, right? Organization wise. And then what happens, you put that down and you just go to your life. And then when your calendar says to do something, just do that thing. That's why I said earlier, I trust past Anthony to set up present Anthony's future. Like but when I'm making that schedule, I'm locked in on making a schedule. So I don't have to second guess it when I show up here. And it allows me to be in such a better place of flow.
Do you have any tips for planning out your schedule?
Yeah, it's a whole flow. So I have a thing called a GPS planner. It's quite literally a system that I made and a planner I got created because people ask,
GPS
like, how do you
stand for?
Goal, plan, start. What's the goal? What's the plan? Let's get it started. I'm not a big fan of like deadlines. I'm like, let's start this thing. If it needs to be done in 2 months, why not get it done in a month? Let's just get started, see what it turns into. So what I realize is this, and this is the simplest way I can do it. I've done full like hour-long trainings on how this works in workshops, but it doesn't have to be that crazy in depth. What I say is take a look at all the things you have to get done, right? These projects that you keep listing and organizing, put them in one place. I have one running long list of things that have to get done, and it's always being populated. It's always getting things put onto it. Not every day. I'm not trying to take on too much. I like to delegate a lot to my team where possible, and I do that often. But the idea is like I got a list of things. Then what I do is I go to that list and I go, okay, of the things that have to be, done, which ones are going to be taking place in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? I want to open my time up and go, or it could honestly be like, not this year, right? I'll move some things out. Like if it was a book project or something to get done, like that's not going to fit now. It sounds good, but let's be realistic. It's not going to happen. It's going to deter me from what I want to focus on. So I put in this organization, man. Okay, here's the things that are here for now. And some things get pushed out. A lot of things get pushed out where possible. And now what I do is go, all right, of the things that are here, let's just break those open to the individual pieces or steps and then allocate time to getting those steps done based on my knowledge of myself or someone I may bring in to delegate. What will that take, right? And do I even do this thing? Sometimes I give it to somebody else. I'm like, I don't need to do that. And so I'll get like a list that has like, here's the main thing. Here's the segmented pieces. Here's the hours allocated. That's a 30-hour project. That's a 4-hour project, whatever it is. I just got it here on a sheet. And I go, cool. Let me leave that there for a second. I then come over to my calendar and I go, what do I want my life to look like? When do I want to get up? When do I want to spend time with my kids? When am I going to work out? What am I going to eat? Are we traveling somewhere? Do I got an event I'm doing? Like these are little things that kind of go in. And so as I have this thing, I'll start filling it with colors, and eventually it's all taken care of, but it's not always full. I end up having a bunch of these open spaces. And I go, all right, well, I've got 25 open hours. I've got 40 open hours. And keep in mind, some of the things that are on my calendar are standing work things. Like I may have meetings or we have podcasts, right? But the idea is I have these areas that are green. It's my work time, creative time. And so what I do is I go, great, I now have an organized way for my life to run the way I want, and I have infused space to do the work that I need to get done for my projects. I now go back to this list and I take it hour by hour, modularly, and I plug it in. I go hour 1 of 30 here, hour 2 of 30 here, hour 1 of 4 here, hour 3 of 30 here. And I just kind of block it out. And what you're asking was, how do I do this every week? I do this for 4 to 6 weeks. For me, on average, I'm right around 5 weeks. So like we're at Friday now. On Sunday, I will block out 4 weeks from now or 5 weeks from now, meaning the next 3 weeks are already scheduled and structured for me. I know what I'm doing. If I want to go review it, I know why I did it, but it's already there. Now, there are times where I can put like, a 2 or 3 hour block of like, if I go over in time, something in life happens, so I don't freak out because obviously life happens. And so I'll make adjustments or room to be able to make adjustments on the fly. But my life runs to where every time I eat a week, I lead a week. I should add one to the backside 5, 6 weeks from now. And what it allows me to do is a couple beautiful things. One, I'm not worried about what next week is or if it's the right stuff. I show up and I'm in flow. 2, it allows me to integriously say no. Because that's one that most people don't pay attention to. A lot of our stress comes from saying yes to things because we want to feel like we're of use as a human. Like we like to be desired. And so when someone says, hey, can you do this? Yeah, I can do it. I don't have time though. So why am I saying yes? So now I can go, hey, I can't on this day, but I can in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Matter of fact, when you reached out, it wasn't immediate. It was like, hey, I got some time on this day, and it was a couple weeks away. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at scheduling and structuring things, that's how I live my life. And I could also, most times I'll be like, I can't, I got something coming up. Let's go 4 weeks out. But I know that my window coming back into my week for my long trip, I kind of left it open. I had nothing sitting there. I was like, yeah, we could hop on and do that episode. But there are people who will like actually reach out and go, hey, I got time in a month. I got time in 5 weeks. And they go, what? There's no time? No, there's not time. And here's why. Even if it's something that just says work or creative time, and I haven't allocated something to that yet, that's my time. Uh-huh. I'm not giving you mine. Like I have my time, and I will find something to do because I never have nothing to do. But if I give it to you, I have to say no to Anthony now. And now I don't feel like I've given myself what I need, the space I need to be me. And then you're going to get the worst version of me or a worser version of me. And so that's my time to create what I need to give to the world so that you are a person that even wants to reach out to me in the first place, you know? And so I structure my life like that. There is room for you. It's just not when you want it. And I do it every week.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate you slotting me in. What about the actual? Is that just like Google Calendar and
Oh
Sheets?
yeah.
Did I hear you say?
It's a duality. So I like to create my schedule on paper. So I find the idea of having a pen and paper and the whole week in front of me, like I've it's like, 8 by 9 or whatever, or 5.5 by 9, something like that. Just regular like calendar, but it's small enough to tuck anywhere, but it's got all those things I need to be able to plan a week. And so what I do is I like to write visually and like tactile, like what my life looks like. I use the list from digital, but I'm writing it in. And then what I do is I reconcile it with the digital portion. So I take a look at my paper calendar. I go, here's what I've got added, and I'll add that week. And so I just write it. That's what I'm doing. That one day I'm adding it 5 weeks out, and I'll write it in pencil, and then I take it, make it a digital. If for some reason something changes, and I try not to change too much for this purpose, but I just go in and I go, hey, if it's a new calendar invite, a digital invite, something I booked, right? I will leave that email in my inbox unread until I've added it to the paper. I'm not going to, it's going to be an unread email because I freak out on like a whole bunch of unread emails. I'm like, I hate having emails on here. That's how my life runs. So if I see it, I go, oh, cool, I got to do it. So what I'll do is I'll go to the paper calendar, I'll write it in, I read the email, we're moving on. If it's something where I'm out and about and I need to write it in the paper calendar, what I do is I will write it in the paper calendar and then immediately put it in the digital calendar. I obviously have to check the digital calendar to make sure space for the pencil. But if it's usually up to date, I can go, oh, it's yellow. Let me do something with my wife here. And I can throw like a little day in. Then I go and pop it into the digital calendar on my phone because obviously it's my phone, it's on my computer, it's on my iPad, it's on my watch nowadays. It's everywhere. And so I'm just doing that. The idea, though, is because it's so far out, I'm not adding a bunch of things in there all the time. Like people look at it as if it's the next 2 weeks type of entry. The next 2 weeks of our lives for all of us usually is pretty jam packed for everybody. It's always the next 2 weeks, right? And
Yeah.
so what I do is I live beyond the 2 weeks. So my 2 weeks is pretty packed and that's good. That's how it's supposed to be. So when I'm making these adjustments and I'm reconciling it, I'm not doing this 17 times a day. I'm doing it like once or twice, 3 times a week because I'm not making a bunch of adjustments. And if I do things, I'll add them 4 or 5 weeks out. And then I have a window of time on a Sunday. I sit down, make sure it's good. It's rock and roll. And so I'm super just in peace most days. And I get to be present with my people. Like when I turn off the computer, I'm home. I'm dad. I'm on the couch. I'm wandering the house. I'm fixing things. I'm just doing dad stuff, even though there's a bunch to still get done. But it's going to get done when it's scheduled to get done. And that's okay.
How do you ensure that you don't fall off the wagon with that system? That's the one thing I'm thinking. A lot of people might be thinking, like, if you miss a few days or a week, and then it's kind of, oh, fucking hell, like.
Yeah, that happens. I'm not gonna lie, it happens. Here's what I will tell you though: the good thing is when it's modular, I can just move the hour blocks around. So that's why I do a couple things where I'll create like a space to catch up. I do that. My weekends are almost never scheduled; like they're wide open blocks. And so if we're doing nothing, that's a time to either catch up or get ahead. So I'll look at my next week and go, hey, what can I do now to give myself more time next week? And I'll do that. I'll move it forward if it's just simple stuff. And then on top of that, the biggest issue is we are going to have days we fall off track. The problem is because there's no system, we just get out of whack and that day turns into 7 days and in a month. But if you have a plan, a structure, it's in place, all you have to do is go back to the table, sit down and go, all right, I missed these 7 hours. Where do I move things around real quick to get it back on track tomorrow? And you can do it. You just erase with some pencil, drag it around. All right, we're back on track. Let's go. And it's really that simple. Because yeah, I mean, I have things where my kids have issues, or there's something my wife needs done, or all of a sudden I got to reach out this morning for a buddy he's like his brother's going through something where he's literally divorced, so he's gonna be getting divorced, 4 kids, wife just out in the world wandering now. He's like, bro, he needs someone to talk to who's gone through it, but also can give him some insights. He's like, I need some of your time today. I got you. So I'll move some things in the afternoon. I've already done it. I've already moved some things around to fit. but I can do that and not freak out because I'm just moving an hour, right? I'm not going like the whole day is gone. It's like, no, that hour, move it. I'm good. Here we go. And I'm telling you, man, it is the structure that gives you peace and freedom. Most people think that the structure like this is a confining. I'm so confined. You mean I have to show up and do that? Well, you probably shouldn't put things on your calendar that you feel like you have to do that you hate, right? Delegate that or figure out how to get delegated in time. But realistically, I want to be free in my free time, mentally free in my free time. If I don't have this system, all I do is walk around all day with a box full of crazy on top of my head, and I'm actively in anxiety and stress all the time. But now that I've taken this thing and organized it, when I'm free, I'm mentally free. I'm walking around with no pockets, bro. I'm just raw dogging life. I don't even need a phone. I'm doing my thing, and it's chill. But if you don't do this, and I can do that because I know that tomorrow my time is set to do what has to be done, and I show up and do it. Now, yeah, there's sometimes battles of like me, like today, I got to film for 2 hours later. At this very moment in time, I don't feel like doing it, but I know that half hour before this, I got a thing that just says get amped. So I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to move a little bit because if I move my body, I get in the emotional state that I need to be in to film the videos. But I know that about myself now. So I put that in because I know that when I have a block of 2 or 4 hours of videos, that's not super engaging and fun for me all the time. So I go, let me put a little half hour of get amped, right? So you do that, but you get to know yourself and then you create this structure that creates more freedom for you so that when I get done today, and it's Friday, I can go, cool, I'm done. I hang out with family. I'm not going to be stressing off of, man, I need to film videos. I didn't get the videos done. My team's going to be mad at me now. Like I don't have to feel any of that anxiety. It's gone because I know how to structure my life.
What are some ways that we can actually stick to the calendar? Because I've done this before and I've planned it all out. And then I think it's like I feel like it's like the man telling me what to do, even though it was me, and the calendar's there, and I'm kind of like, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. The identity of the individual you want to have the life of, they do this. I operate with some interesting, great humanity people. Like I float around in some cool circles, man. I'm truly blessed. Every one of them. I mean, besides the ones who are like they're ayahuasca leaders and stuff, they're different people. You can't put them in the same pocket. But the ones that are company owners that have families as well, this is a concept that they get. Now, here's the cool part. This is just my system. I have this system in place now after 11 years of refinement from somebody else that gave me their system. He's like, hey, here's how I do it. I go, great. And I started doing his system and I go, I don't like this piece. And I would beat my head against trying to do it. And then I eventually figured like, oh, you know what? I've made the cookies enough. I can maybe adjust the recipe. Like I don't want to adjust the recipe before I've made some cookies, right? But now that I've done that enough for a couple of years, like let me go ahead and do my own. And so I made this my own, and I recommend everybody makes it their own thing. If you don't like paper calendars, don't do the paper calendar. If you only like paper, cool. Have a system where you take pictures of it every single week and give it to a virtual assistant and say, please populate my calendar, right? There's little nuances of what you can do, but the idea is you can't wander through your days expecting to get up the mountain. It doesn't make any logical sense. Logically, it doesn't make sense. And I will tell you this also, your success is found beyond the moments you just mentioned where I go, the man's been, I don't want to do this. Cool. Guess what? Every person who doesn't have success had that exact same moment and they succumbed to it. They did. This is the nature of it. The idea that I've noticed is in those little beautiful moments of, I don't want to do this. I go, oh, okay. Well, I'm human. Other people have had the same moment. The people that have what I want most, they also got here and they took that turn. I'm going down that path, not that one. So that moment of tension, of friction is a gift because it's an alert going, hey, you're getting closer, man. You're making progress. Now lean in. And here's what happens. This is a beautiful part about the identity work, about the structure I'm talking to. It goes from being something that is hard to do because it's out of character to where it becomes so much part of your character, it is hard not to do. And that hard not to do, bro, it's like flying. It's free. It's loose. You feel like just a bad mama jamma doll. You feel different, and that's what you want. The idea is, I don't believe you can have a life or a vision above your current identity. So if you don't identify with certain things that become hard not to do because they're on your identity now, you don't get the outcomes those people have. And so that's where, for me, yes, 100%. There are times, probably every day for me, where I go, oh, I don't feel like doing that, right? But I know that that's the moment of me finding another space for me to become more of the person I want to be a month from now, 6 months from now. And then what happens, these little things become normal to do. Like if I was to put 10 years ago me into my schedule today, he'd have a heart attack on day one. He'd be like, I can't do all this, right? And now there's things that I do that are like, there are people like, how do you do that? Like, you do it every single month? I do it every Monday. What are you talking about? Like, that's every Monday. And so you get to grasp how people's perception is of the thing. And I go, it's not because it's all of a sudden easier to do. Like, anybody hopping into it, it'd be hard, but I have now normalized myself to it. I've built the muscle for it, and it becomes easy. If the simple metaphor, and I'll stop here, is it's kind of like walking in a gym. You pick up a barbell, and it's super heavy, and you can't lift it. And what you do is you go, okay, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to slowly, little by little, start at a lower weight and build and build and build until I get to that weight. And eventually, I do that weight, and I move so beyond that weight that it becomes my warm-up weight, because I'm now stronger. So the same weight, the weight hasn't changed, still 45 pounds. But because I'm stronger, it feels like 5 pounds. I just had to keep lifting weights. So when you leave the gym, you don't get stronger. So stay in the gym of life, and then those things that are hard now, they become easy.
Yeah, it's that constant mini adaptations, isn't it? And like you say, it all works with habits, and yeah, so much of this is identity, isn't it? Like, obviously that's so much of what you talk about. Yeah.
That's the goal for me, to get to a point where, yeah, at the far side of this, the goal is for you to be so locked into it being who you are that you don't even think about it anymore. It just gets done.
Accountability is a good lever to pull, isn't it? And for me,
for sure.
Getting this podcast up and running, I really lent into that one. I've got a little group that I set up with some like-minded people, and it's just like goal crushing. And we would set little tasks, and my thing was like, if I don't get the podcast up and running, I had to do this forfeit. And I find that the most powerful thing for what I'm doing now actually is that doing a podcast is literally you're having constant meetings, which you have to be there for. So and it's just like keeping it rolling and keeping one episode coming out every Monday, and not dropping the ball. I had an issue the other week, a real technical issue, and basically I had 5 episodes in the bank. All 5 had errors which weren't my fault, and I couldn't get them fixed. And I'm like, it's Sunday night. I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, I can't. I was like, I'm just going to have to not publish an episode. And I was so like getting cut up about it because it's meant so much just to be like keeping them coming.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck it. So I did like a last minute Ask Me Anything, like 10 o'clock at night, got a load of questions. And it was fine. And it ended up being like one of my most popular episodes, which was really insightful as well.
That's how it works.
Yeah, man. It's just, but yeah, that like there's that identity is there. Like I'm a person who doesn't miss publishing on a Monday. Like I've built that up now.
It's who you are. I love it. And that is it. And it's not a thing that you don't need motivation. You don't have to get like this energy up. You go, if I go to bed and I don't get this done, I'm going to feel like less me. And that's a different feel. Like I've done videos a day. Today's going to be episode 995 straight weekdays of a 5 to 7 minute podcast. I do it daily.
Amazing.
Before this, I did 1,333 straight days of a 90-second video a day. So I'm doing like 2,500 straight days of doing things. And the idea of me going to bed and not having that done, it makes my insides curdle because it's who I am to do it now. Doesn't matter the reason why, 100%, but it does do beneficial stuff for the company, which is great. But it's who I am. And that is the secret thing that if I could plug into somebody's head, you would change your entire life. If the concept gets, because if you can take that, oh, that's what happened, and you apply it somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else, well, now you are in phenomenal shape because it's who you are to do these things. Now you have a great marriage because you do these things your wife needs you to do. You're a phenomenal parent because you've adapted to do what you have to do for your kids, right? Everything. It's not a special secret thing. It's just a human thing that we don't tap into properly.
I want to talk a bit more about identity shift. Something that I've become very aware of since starting the podcast actually is authenticity and masks, and how can we ensure that when we are taking on a new identity that we don't inadvertently pick up a mask along the way?
Oh, that's a great question. So the way I look at this is before you don't accidentally create an identity. Well, you can if you aren't paying attention. But if we're in the space of saying I'm actively and presently aware of what's going on in the identity, right? One, you'll notice the masks of things you picked up. You'll notice areas where you just did it because a teacher, preacher, coach, leader, television, news, whatever, it just kind of was putting a lot of things in your head. And all of a sudden you go, man, I just realized that's where that came from. That's not even an original thought of mine. You can be aware to it, right? But then what happens is once you're aware, you can't be unaware. Like you start to be more cognizant of what's going on around you. And so what you do, if you're smart about it, have some kind of intelligence, is you start paying attention to the habits you have. And then you start asking yourself, where will this habit take me in time? Not so much the achievement, but the human you'll become. So for me, I always look at the idea of like, someone's got a boss named Bob. Bob's the boss, right? And they like Bob, they respect Bob, and Bob's in a position they want to be in, right? What they do is they blindly look at the things that Bob tells them to do. They're a good worker. Bob says do this, so I do this. Bob says do that, so I do that. And Bob says I do it, so you should do it. Cool, I want to be in Bob's position, so I do what Bob does. And what happens is, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, 4 years go by, and I'm in a position where I'm living like Bob, right? Bob's done something else. I take a look and I go, holy crap, I'm out of shape. My wife doesn't talk to me. My husband doesn't talk to me. I don't know what my kids are doing. I'm miserable. My work is my life. And then you take a look back and you go, where did I go wrong? And you go, oh, I didn't realize this is what Bob had behind the scenes. Like this was Bob was overweight. Bob was in his position where his wife never came to the thing. Like you didn't even pay attention to what Bob's habits had done to Bob. And so what I do is I step back and I go, hey, before we chart any of these paths, we start putting random habits in, who do you want to be? Literally, who do you want to be? And most people go, well, my future self. And I go, well, actually, there's an interesting thing. You can't figure out your future self. It's a very interesting disconnect that we think exists. But there's some cool studies done by like UCLA called The Stranger Inside. And they put some dials on the brain. They said, hey, talk about a person you love. Love lights up in the brain. They showed them a stranger's picture. They go, tell me about this person. They go, I don't know who this is. They go, all right, tell me about your future self. Stranger lit up in the brain. There's not a direct connection. So we don't sacrifice for the person. We don't do much. One of the banks, Charles Schwab, did this thing called Face Your Future, and they actually used this information, and they had people think about that person. They had people increase their investment in their future by 40% because they could finally connect with a different person. And so what I do is I go, hey, what is it you want to be doing or accomplishing later on? And they go, okay, I want to do X, Y, and Z. All right, who do you see in the world? You don't got to know them. Who is doing that? Now, I don't mean they're doing all the things you want, but they're doing the thing you want there in a way that you respect or you like or you admire. You may hate every other thing they do. You may absolutely hate the way they walk and talk and chew, right? But maybe you love the way that their kids show up and hug them when they come home in the afternoon or evening, right? Maybe you have somebody else that you hate, but you love the car they drive and the house they live in, right? There's things that you got to look at and go, how did that person accomplish that? How'd they get that? And then if you can kind of peek through, even ask them sometimes, you ask, hey, what did you do? And they'll tell you. And here's the crazy thing. it's usually a fairly simple thing. Like, I'm a speaker. I travel the world. I talk. And people go, how'd you do it? I go, I did a video every day for 90 seconds. Dude, it's that simple. I did it for 3.5 years. They go, oh, it's got to be something else. No, I'm telling you, that is what I did. I just started finding ways to talk for 90 seconds and then post it. And I did it for 3.65 years, dude. And they'll hear that, they'll go, okay, cool. And they won't do it. They won't even do it. And it's like, usually the thing that got someone to the place where you even see them in the first place, or you're inspired by them, is something that was pretty simple, or a thought process that you could apply, but you're not willing to do it. And so when you say, how do you don't get the masks on, what you have to do is go find the people, find out what they do, and then do the thing that is in line with that area you want to be. And then you don't have to worry about accidentally doing something. Because what happens is people go, I want to be a speaker. And I tell them what to do. They found me, they saw me, I've told them what to do. They like a part of my life of me doing this. Then they go do something else. And then they never get where they want to go. They're angry at themselves. There's this resentment for not having success. They're frustrated. People around them see the frustration. These things unraveled, and then they start picking up random, unthoughtful habits. And all of a sudden, they wake up 5 years later and go, "What? Who am I now?" And so the idea is, if you do pick up things haphazardly, you will find that you create along the way habits that don't actually work because you weren't being clear in your selection. But if you do the thing I'm telling you to do, like find somebody or research something and find out what the simplest thing is that you can do every single day, well, now you start to develop a habit and develop an identity in time to where you just do that thing, and you've already been aware of who you'll become when you do that thing because you see somebody else doing it. And so if you can do that in the areas that matter in your life, which does take some mental work, you're not going to wake up years from now and go, I don't know who I am. I think that's why we have this whole midlife crisis, kind of situation, because people they're sprinting through life, dude. They're doing the job that they thought they're supposed to do. They're with the people they thought they're supposed to be with. They're doing things they thought they were supposed to do. And they just are doing, all of a sudden they wake up to it and go, who am I? What's going on? And you don't have to wait till a midlife crisis to ask that question or change that path. You could do that now and avoid all of that headache.
Yeah, man. It's crazy just how much we pick up from literally everything, isn't it? We are influenced by everything that surrounds us. And I noticed this when I'd been working on my own for a long time, sort of self-employed, and I went back into the office environment. And I'd done a lot of work on myself, and I had all these good habits and, ice baths and meditation and all the usual stuff. Yeah. And I went back into the office environment, and I was like, whoa, fucking hell. Like, I couldn't believe, I just noticed all these really bad habits. Everyone was vaping or smoking or eating crisps and chips and chocolate and all these things. And I was like, it was like an attack on the senses. It was kind of like, whoa. And it scared me because I was like, fuck, I don't want to end up leaning into that as well, because of course it's been I had to notice that I was like, right, I need to be a good influence here and not allow myself to be influenced in the other way. But that takes real self discipline and, like you say, knowing yourself. And I think for me, it was a lot of continual reflection. How was my day? Bit of journaling. How did I show up? Did I show up as myself? What did I do that was out of alignment with my true self? But yeah, these things can work. You can have positive role models, can't you? And then you can have negative ones, and you just have to learn how to spot the negative ones before they come in and change your behavior.
And you got to be okay with doing that and realizing that just because you found something you don't like doesn't mean you suck. It just means you got something to work on and you're human. All right, cool. Let's go to work. It's not the end of the world, essentially. Most people are so afraid of admitting that they're not perfect. We'll say, I'm not perfect. But when presented with an imperfection, you fight it, as opposed to going, maybe I should work on that. And the ego gets in the way, and then nothing progresses, and you keep doing the same things and we're in the same place. But when you're aware of it, like you just talked about, now we have a whole other phase to go into, which is it's going to be work. You got to be the odd man out, and it's uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's so beautifully worth it at the end.
Yeah, man. What about obviously your background, it was NFL, and you've spoken publicly about the understandable sort of identity crisis that comes at the end of something like a sports career.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that we can do if we're in that kind of phase right now? Let's say I'm an athlete, to like prepare for that inevitable shift in identity that's going to become, when we get older or get an injury or whatever.
The hard thing is, I play professional sports as an NFL guy. I'm not real big on, like, you should be thinking a little bit about the future, but you got to give your all to your current. If you're planning that you're giving energy that should be here in this position here to keep you where you're at, to where you don't have to go into that next thing too quick. If you like where you're at, we'll call it. But as an athlete, yeah, there's a different space, because at some point it's going to end without you knowing it. And hopefully it doesn't, but majority of people, it ends without their own say. It's like you get injured, you get cut, you don't get picked up, your game, your life, your career's done. Oh, dang, like now what do I do, right? And so here's the thing. When you do leave that thing, let's say you've planned for it. If you plan properly, you plan with people that were intelligent, experienced, they have a plan, you must now be okay with redirecting your energy, the amazing intangibles that you have, into this new thing to rebuild the cathedral of your life. You do have to, leave this one. You got to move the one you're in, because you can't show up to work tomorrow doing the same thing, right? This beautiful cathedral of a sports world and a professional career you've built, you don't get to do anymore. And when you have to wake up on a certain day and go, man, I don't have that thing to do. Who am I? Which what most of us have is like, who am I of value without that? It sucks. But if you realize that you are not the fruit, because this is the fruit of your labor, the sports, the career, it's the fruit of your labor, the fruit of your works you've done. When you realize that you are not the fruit, but you are the tree, it's a game changer. Because now you realize is the tree, which is you, created that fruit of career, of whatever it is. And again, it's hard. But then if you cycle back and go, let me take care of the tree, let me keep giving the tree nutrients, it'll create sweeter, abundant fruit in a different way. Like maybe you did a bunch of apples, let's make some pears, right? It sounds weird, but the idea is you're going to create again. But if you sit back and go, I've lost the fruit of my life, and all you focus on is the fruit, well, the rest of the tree dies because you weren't paying attention to it. So other things in your life are going to die. The other fruits of your life, your marriage, your health, your parenting, maybe your hobbies, your nonprofit you use to serve people, like these things, they disappear because you're only focused on one piece of fruit. So it's the reality of like, I am the tree, I can create more is a big piece. That's saying you were prepared. If you're unprepared, it's even harder, because now what happens is you are left there reeling. You're mourning the death of something that you didn't expect to die. And part of it is an ego death, which is I have to come down to human level. I'm not this person every day gets to get called and I'm going to get an interview because I'm not playing anymore. That's the next guy up, right? Next girl up. And that's the nature of the world. It's going to progress in that manner. But at some point in time, you have to circle back the same way the other person does and goes, I am not my works. I am the human that did the works. Can I use these same intangibles, these skills, this awareness to enter the world where other people are at and use that to outpace them? And for me, I thankfully did a piece of this, but got better at it later as I went on. But I left the sports world. I didn't know what to do. I was opening a gym business, doing my stuff. But at a certain point in time, I realized, all right, I'm playing a different game now. I'm playing this business game. But I come from a world where I know how to be structured, organized, disciplined, be focused, work on things I don't want to work on, take feedback from people without it being feeling criticism, but understanding that it's coaching, and then do the thing wholeheartedly, even if it wasn't my idea, which is an interesting thing people don't like to do. Like my kids, if it's my idea, they don't want to do it. If it's their idea, they'll buy in, right? Or if someone tells you to do something, all of a sudden there's an initial like tension, and immaturely you'll stop. You'll try to do something else because you don't want them to be right. I'm like, damn it, let's go. Tell them what to do. I don't want to bang my head against the wall like you did. Like, please tell them what to do, and I'll embrace it emotionally, no problem. And so if you can take those intangibles from that and apply it to something new, what might have taken the average person who didn't have those skills developed a year or 2 years, you could do it in 6 months. Like, I have outpaced a lot of people in my industry without having anything more than just a different set of intangibles inside. I'm not more skilled, or I wasn't more skilled before. I didn't have connections before. I didn't even know things. I did not do technology stuff. But the way that I function as a human intangibly, I was willing to do things that they weren't in the moments that they didn't want to do it. And so those things compounded. So now I'm literally like multiple years ahead of people that started at the exact same time I did. And they come to me and they go, how would you do that with a wife and 3 kids, and you do this stuff? You still how do you do it? I go, it's just, I don't know, unless you want to go back to when I was 15 years old and do football with me. Like, I don't know how to exactly tell you that, but I will tell you this. Part of me understands that it's developed through my experiences. And if you remove yourself from those, you don't face those hard experiences, you don't develop the tools. I could give you the words all day long. You won't emotionally get it. But I will say this, if you can subject yourself to the experiences and really commit to doing it and going through them, you'll develop all the same intangibles that I have. Sports was not the only place I could develop that. There's so many great places in the world, sans sports, where you can develop these amazing human intangibles, but people don't lean into them. They avoid them because it's uncomfortable. They want to find workarounds and shortcuts. And I go, that's not the way. To be honest, the long way is the short way. That makes sense. Like the slow way is the fast way. It's the same language. What it is doing that thing is what quickens the pace later. Doing it slow and arduous, uncomfortably now, it forces you to figure out these things to where later on you can move faster than you used to move. But if you avoid that thing, you're always looking for shortcuts, you're always dancing around. You're never getting momentum to take off. And so leaning into things and doing the arduous, difficult stuff for a period of time, it sharpens you to where later on you can cut better.
Yeah, like I love that analogy with the tree, and yeah, like it's something I was thinking about recently actually with the whole ego. And it was something I literally thought about, was it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not I'm not the gym, I am not the podcaster, I'm not, the guitar or whatever it may be, but I am the person who showed up to do those things. And yeah, I love that about the tree. Like, it's a really nice sort of framing when we're talking about ego. What about looking at our past and when we're doing our dark work? Because I've done some of this, and going through therapy and stuff, and looking back, and one of the things I thought was, like, how can we prevent, like, coloring our view of the past with a present day bias?
Honestly, I just have other people look at it. There's something to happen. There's a statement I love, and it says, it's hard to see the label when you're inside the jar. And we will give things rosy colored glasses. No one likes to be the bearer of bad news in themselves. And so I'm pretty open nowadays, more than I used to be for sure, to having people I respect and admire tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. And it's a really difficult thing. I call them Triad Talks. So we use a similar process to the roots and fruits I mentioned earlier. And I will actually engage with other people. I call them Triad 3, 2 people that I'm on pretty good terms with, 1 person that I'm not. And I let them know, hey, I'm trying to improve myself, my life, the people around me. And I have 10 questions I need to ask. And I need transparent, honest, like very just direct feedback. When I do this, my stipulation is I'm not going to rebut, refute, or justify anything. And in fact, I'm not going to respond for 48 hours after what I hear you tell me. Would you be willing to do this for me or with me? And so what happens is I hop on the phone with 3 people and I go through these areas. Now, they don't know all aspects of life. They're from different walks of life. They may not know your finances. They may not know your marriage, right? But ask them what they do know something about and get some insights. And what happens is you let them talk. Now, the first 3 or 4 questions, they're going to be tiptoeing. because they don't quite know 100% where you're really going to be at in response. But there will be a moment when they say something and they know they said something rough and they're reading your response. If you are true to word and you don't fly off the handle, they're going to go, oh, I really can say something. And they'll start giving you gold. It'll hurt your heart, but it'll be gold. When you get done with it, cycle back to the beginning, ask those same 3 or 4 questions to get more depth because they were holding back then. Now they're not. And then you step away and you let that emotionally sink in. The reason I say 48 hours, when emotion is high, intelligence is low. It's like a kind of metaphor, but I kind of, when I'm all spun up, I usually don't think clearly. And so when I get this time to let it subside, I can usually come back to my logical wits and go, gosh, there was some validity to what that person said there. Or, I get where they came from, but I don't agree with that. Maybe you go, I don't agree with that, but these 3 people all said the same thing. Maybe it is true, right? And so what happens is I'm able to step back and be able to see somewhat objectively things about myself that I couldn't see or wouldn't see. And now when you ask, like, how do you get back to that point? Now I have some true depth on, like, gosh, what do I do with this? And how do I get better? If this is how they see me, this is not a good thing. And you can actually be critical enough to give yourself this clear idea of, like, all right, doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but it does mean I have some things to work on. And now you get to work.
Would you be willing to share any examples
Of things?
of those things that came up?
Yeah. So here's the thing for me personally. I had this situation where I was, like I told you, I was in that window of time where I was divorced and I eventually got my marriage back together. And I had 3 people I talked to, Denise, Jason, and then my ex-wife. And I had these conversations of, like, what am I not seeing about me? Like, I'm not, this is more like relationship wise. Denise at the time was like, she's like, you're kind of running and gunning, man. You're like, this is not a very integrous person. Like, not that you're not a good man to your kids or something, but like, that's not, I wouldn't be in a relationship with someone doing what you're doing, multiple partners doing your thing. Like, I get that, my ex-wife she was very hard to hear, but she was telling me, like, you didn't love me. I'm like, no, I loved you. She's like, no, love isn't the thing in your heart. It's what you do with your actions. It's like this thing of, like, you were loving the gym more than you were loving me. She resented my business in the beginning because I loved the gym. I would show up there no matter what and sacrifice for that. But I wouldn't come home when I needed to. When I told her I had to be home in an hour, I'm home in 2 hours. She's like, that's you don't love me. Like, you love the gym, right? And then my buddy Jay was like, dude, this isn't the best friend that I've known all my life. He's like, this isn't the man that, like, he's like, you got different women and I'm meeting different people and you're bringing some people, like, around. Like, he's like, I don't know him. I can't take him with my friends because you're the weird friend now, just very transparent. And it's hard to hear. Like, that's just one of the areas, by the way, there's more. We got the business stuff too. And the idea is, like, you sit there and you listen to it and it pokes. And then you start to, like, you want to, like, no, because these are people you care about. You don't want them to see you that way. But here's the truth is, they already do. Nothing you say is going to change their minds. These are people you selected because they know you. The thing that changes their mind is your actions, your acceptance of the actions that must be taken. And when you are able to be honorable enough to own that, acknowledge that, and then work on that, that's what changes minds and changes hearts. And so for me, there was things I had to work on, and I did. I worked on them. I had some hard conversations, hard actions. It was a very arduous, long period of time of just kind of fighting against the current me and to build the better me. But over time, it worked out. I have amazing friendships. All those people are still in my life. My ex-wife's now my current wife. It was a hard-fought journey, but it started with what you're talking about. It was me having to go in and ask these crazy deep questions on things I couldn't see in myself at the time.
What was it called? A Triad Talk, did you say?
I call them Triad. Triad meaning 3, so Triad Talks.
Yeah. And how often would you do them? Because obviously,
once a year.
Once a year, in all areas, or just like you maybe just pick one, or?
Well, no, you go over all areas in that one call. So you go over the call and you ask them, okay, here's the area. Would you score a 1 to a 10 or a 0 to a 10 and why?
Got you.
And let them go. And then they break your heart a little bit.
And it can be different people depending on.
You can change it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a real good one. What about I know we got to wrap up shortly. what about crafting your message, our message? Obviously, you do talks all around the world. Like, I always think to myself, I was like, I'd like to do a TED talk at some point, and or maybe write a book or something. And I'm very early on my journey, but I've been trying to I'm sort of seeing some themes with its authenticity, masculinity, vulnerability. There's some kind of things that I'm trying to tease out of myself. How do we develop that voice to the point where we can do a book or talk on stage?
Yeah, that's actually not that hard. So I have a business called Speak to Freedom. And in this program, quite literally my job is to teach people how to do what you're asking. And so what I've found is you have an experience of life that nobody's ever had. There's a place that you were that you got out of. Typically, if you're having this emotional thought you're talking to now, you've solved some things. You've crossed some finish lines, we'll call it. And so what you first do is you go, hey, I got to figure out what my unique message is. Not my story. What's the message extracted from my story that's a value to the world? So for me, it's dark work. It's the work that I did in the dark that allowed me to shine brighter in the light. I've done it in sports, my marriage, my business. All of us have done it. We've done things that nobody saw or celebrated that allowed us to become successful in some way. Like right now, there's things you did behind the scenes that nobody saw. No one's high-fiving and cheering, but you did it. So you have this different confidence to reach out to me out of the blue and go, hey, I got a podcast. You want to join me, right? That doesn't happen if you don't feel some kind of confidence. And the confidence came from actions that were typically a little bit harder. And so the first thing is find out what that is. And then now what you do is you go back through your life and go, okay, I'm here now. And not here meaning you promise something beyond where you've accomplished. Like I would never say, I'm going to teach you how to run $1 billion company. That's not realistic. I haven't run $1 billion company. But if you want to be able to be in a place where you have a sense of a dominator's identity, I can help you there, right? So the idea is go, where do I want to take people? Where are they at? And there's going to be a point A and a point B. Where are they at? Where are you now? In between point A to point B, there's going to be two simple things you had to do. You had to pick something up or pick things up, which means learn some things, add to your life, and put a lot of things down. Stop doing stuff. You started doing things, you stop doing things. It's that simple. Pick up, put down, I call it. And what you want to do is go along this journey. Okay, I pick some things up, I put some things down. Usually it starts with you having put some things down. So I go, where's the first time you stopped doing something and why? And there's a reason why I say and why. The first time you stopped doing something, you stopped doing it because you became aware of something that you shouldn't be doing anymore. You became aware of a situation where you didn't like anymore. You became aware of this place you're at and you go, I don't like this place anymore. You woke up to it and you go, gosh, I don't like this. I'm going to stop this. And that should be something you can communicate to somebody else. And you can talk about, hey, if you're in this place doing this, you had this feeling, this emotion. Here's what happened for me. And I realized I was in this place. If you're in that place now, I want you to pay attention as we continue on, right? So now we talk about the thing I had to stop doing. Then the next thing's going to be what I started doing, right? There's going to be things that you learned from putting things down that opened space for you to start figuring new things out, trying new processes, admitting who you are. Like you learn new stuff. And now you go, I'm trying this new thing. So you start applying. It's the second phase of whatever it is. And it could be a multitude of different things you put down, a multitude of things you picked up, right? The third thing is going to be the thing that typically came at a certain point. That was your epiphany. The thing that you really realized and you learned, which gave you the clarity of like, this is what my message is. And you share a story around how that took place. And I put this down, I stopped doing this. And I started doing this. And all of a sudden, God, this happened. I had no idea this was going to happen. And it was right in front of me. And then now at this point in my life, I feel like, God, and that becomes your journey. What I pick up, what I put down. And then you go through what I put down first, what I picked up, what I became aware of, my epiphany. And now your life is comprised of these different moments in different ways that share the same lessons. Because you'll find is the lesson you learned of what you had to start doing, that lesson showed up a bunch of times in your life. It doesn't happen at one time, right? And you can talk to these things. So if you say, I want to start speaking, that's why I would go through the process of at least formulating the structure to start talking.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a simple, effective sort of way for me to go through that. So I appreciate you sharing that with me.
You're welcome.
And my audience, and appreciate you coming on the show and doing this. Where shall I point people to find out more about Anthony and your work?
Oh man, go to You go to darkwork.com or anthonytrucks.com. Those are probably the two best places to come find me. Or social media. If you go to Instagram, where you found me, it's a good place too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you again. I hope you have an awesome day, and I hope to stay in touch. And
yeah, definitely. Man.
Yeah, take care, man. Thank you.
You too. Welcome.
Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?